Imagine you're at a college event on a crisp autumn evening. A speaker steps up, the crowd leans in, the mic opens, and in a second the conversation stops forever. That's what happened in Orem, Utah, when conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot while speaking at Utah Valley University. In the days since, investigators have traced DNA, uncovered text messages and a destroyed note, and arrested a suspect. Details that have sent shockwaves through political and campus communities across the country. But before we continue, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more updates. Below, a clear timeline, the new evidence investigators say ties a suspect to the scene, what we know about both men involved, how officials responded, and practical takeaways for event organizers, students, and citizens trying to make sense of it all. Plus the big picture question nobody can stop asking, why? Quick snapshot, the essentials, what you need to know right now. Charlie Kirk, a prominent conservative activist and co-founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot while speaking at an outdoor event at Utah Valley University on September 10, 2025. Investigators arrested 22-year-old Tyler Robinson after a multi-day manhunt. Officials say DNA from a towel wrapped around the weapon and a screwdriver recovered at the scene matched Robinson. FBI Director Kash Patel publicly stated the DNA connection and said Robinson had expressed a desire to take out Kirk in a text exchange. Authorities report they recovered forensic evidence of a handwritten note in which Robinson allegedly described his plan. Officials say the note itself was destroyed, but its contents were forensically documented. Robinson now faces state and likely federal scrutiny. Prosecutors are compiling evidence including surveillance, social media posts, and digital communications as they prepare charges. Those are the big headlines. Keep reading for the full timeline, the people involved, and how this event is reshaping conversations about political rhetoric, campus safety, and how investigators tie small clues to big crimes. The scene. How the shooting unfolded, a minute-by-minute snapshot. It was supposed to be another entry on a national speaking tour. Charlie Kirk, a polarizing but high-profile conservative commentator and the public face of Turning Point USA, had been booked to speak at Utah Valley University. The event was outdoors, with students and community members gathered to debate and challenge Kirk's viewpoints. According to video and eyewitness timelines reconstructed by news organizations, the shooting occurred while Kirk was speaking to the crowd. Reports indicate a projectile struck him in the neck. First responders rushed him to a hospital, but he later died from his wounds. The campus erupted in confusion and grief. Security footage and follow-up reporting show a chaotic evacuation and an immediate multi-agency response. Within hours, local and federal authorities launched a search for suspects. The community, the online world, and even people who were not there were suddenly watching every update. Within a few days, officials announced that a 22-year-old man, later identified as Tyler Robinson, had been taken into custody following tips and investigation. Arrest details and the lead-up to the capture involved tips from family, surveillance comparisons, and digital footprints. Curious. How do investigators go from a chaotic crime scene to identifying one specific person? The answer lies in the small physical clues that forensics can follow, and a trail of digital behavior that often leaves a suspect's intentions visible. Read on. Cliffhanger. What tiny piece of physical evidence would connect a suspect to a crime scene, and how definitive is it? Keep reading. The answer gets technical but crucial. The forensic breakthrough, towels, screwdrivers, and DNA matches. This is the piece that moved the case from who to who specifically. FBI Director Kash Patel publicly described DNA matches he said were found on a towel wrapped around a rifle recovered near the scene, and on a screwdriver collected from a rooftop near the event. Both samples, Patel said, matched the suspect now in custody. Investigators also said they had evidence of a handwritten note describing the suspect's plan. Officials later said the physical note had been destroyed, but that its contents were corroborated with other forensic traces. Why are these details significant? DNA on a wrapped towel. A towel wrapped around a weapon suggests deliberate concealment and handling before or after the shooting. DNA found on that towel can tie someone to the weapon at or near the time of the crime if the sample is recent and properly handled in the chain of custody. In this case, Officials say forensic labs positively matched the DNA to Robinson. Screwdriver on a roof. A screwdriver may seem mundane, but when found in a location connected to the shooter's vantage point, investigators reported roof access being used to set up across from the speech. DNA on the tool becomes another linking piece. Investigators described the screwdriver being recovered from a building rooftop above the area where shots originated. Destroyed but documented note. Officials say a note was written by the suspect describing the plan. Even when a physical item is destroyed, forensic teams can often recover traces, e.g., impressions, handwriting impressions on other materials, or digital backups, or corroborate its existence through other evidence and witness accounts. In this case, authorities reported they had evidence to show what was in that note. Those are the concrete, physical clues authorities cite. Physical evidence like DNA doesn't usually stand alone. Investigators stitch it together with surveillance video, cell site and GPS data, social media activity, witness statements, and sometimes confessions or incriminating messages. Cliffhanger. If physical evidence ties someone to the scene, does that mean motive is solved? Not always. The next section digs into what we know about the suspect and why motive remains under scrutiny. Who is the accused? What we know about Tyler Robinson. Public reporting paints a picture of a young man, described by neighbors and officials as previously unremarkable, but in the months or years before the shooting becoming more isolated and ideologically detached from his family. Local outlets and national broadcast reporting note that Robinson is 22 and lived with family in Washington County, Utah. He reportedly attended trade school and, according to law enforcement interviews, had exchanges and posts that showed an obsession with Kirk's public profile. One report says he told friends or posted in online communities about confronting Kirk. Others point to private messages and a destroyed handwritten note documented by investigators. A few patterns appear in these snapshots. Family and neighbors described him as once normal, according to officials who spoke publicly. Over time, acquaintances said he adopted views or behaviors sharply divergent from his family's social context. Officials told media he developed a fixation on Kirk. Digital evidence reportedly includes text messages expressing the desire to take out Kirk and chat posts on platforms where he allegedly confessed or discussed intent. Items investigators have used to frame motive and intent in other cases. Authorities say they recovered messages where he expressed intent and a note describing his plan, and that they are reviewing Discord and other communications. The manhunt ended when tips and family recognition of publicly circulated images led to his arrest. Officials have said he was taken into custody without immediate cooperation, and court appearances have followed as prosecutors build the case. Important caveat: many details about Robinson's private life, mental health, and the depth of his planning will remain sealed or unproven until prosecutors make their case in court. Public descriptions from neighbors and officials are snapshots, useful but incomplete. Cliffhanger. Are politics the motive or something more personal? The evidence points in one direction, but legal standards for motive and guilt are precise. Next, we explore motive, ideology, and the dangers of rushing to conclusions. Motive, what investigators say, and what we should avoid assuming. Officials have hinted that Robinson displayed ideological fixation and obsession. Governor Spencer Cox and other officials repeated in interviews that the suspect seemed to have adopted left-leaning views despite coming from a conservative family, and that digital evidence suggests an obsession with Kirk's persona and politics. Investigators say they've recovered messages expressing the intent to kill, and the forensic trail suggests premeditation. But motive in court requires more than media narratives. There are several categories worth distinguishing. 1. Ideological motive. The suspect targeted a high-profile political figure because of political disagreement or radicalization. This narrative is reinforced by reported messages and the target's public profile. 2. Personal fixation. The suspect may have fixated on the personhood of the target rather than political ideology, treating him as an obsessive adversary. Many attackers across the political spectrum act from a mix of personal grievance and ideological justification. 3. Mental health and instability. Sometimes violent acts follow untreated or escalating mental illness combined with access to radical ideas or weaponry. Official accounts often parse clinical and ideological elements carefully. Why does motive matter? For prosecutors, it informs charges. For the public, it informs policy and reaction. And for the media, it shapes narratives. But there's also a danger. Rushing to a single explanation, political, mental health, or conspiracy, simplifies a complex story that will be litigated and investigated. Cliffhanger. The aftermath includes high-stakes political fallout, memorials, and a debate about rhetoric. How are leaders responding? Read the next section. National reaction, politicians, press, and public grief. Kirk's death immediately polarized coverage. Supporters mourned a figure many saw as a mentor to conservative youth. Critics worried about the toxic environment of modern political discourse and the rise of targeted political violence. Turning Point USA and fellow conservative leaders quickly called for unity and remembrance. A memorial was scheduled and public addresses followed, including remarks from family. Fox News and conservative outlets emphasized the brutality of the act and called for a swift investigation. National outlets, from Reuters to The Guardian and the AP, focused on the forensic evidence and the implications for public safety, campus security, and political violence. Coverage also raised questions about how investigators communicate details in high-profile cases and the potential for misinformation in the days after a killing. Social media polarized. Some users deployed the shooting to make political claims or frame conspiracies. Others used the moment to call for restraint and re-examine the tone of political debate. In short, this isn't just a local tragedy. It's a national Rorschach test in which different people read different political and social meanings into the same factual core. Cliffhanger. Amid mourning and rage, what are the legal steps ahead? We turn now to charges, hearings, and what the prosecution will need to prove. Legal process. Charges, evidence, and what prosecutors must show. After an arrest like this, prosecutors typically file formal charges, often after grand jury review or preliminary charging decisions. Reporting indicates Robinson faces state charges including aggravated murder and obstruction for destroying or hiding evidence. Federal interest is likely given the political profile of the target and possible interstate components of planning or communication. Prosecutors will assemble a case built on physical evidence, the DNA matches on the towel and screwdriver, the weapon, ballistic analysis linking bullets to the recovered firearm, and any surveillance footage showing a person in the shooter's position. Digital evidence. Texts and messages where the suspect allegedly expressed intent, Discord or other chat logs showing confession or planning, and cell site/GPS data placing the suspect at or near the scene. Circumstantial and corroborative evidence, witness testimony, tips that led to the arrest, and any forensic work reconstructing the destroyed note or tying the suspect's material possession to the weapon or vantage point. Prosecutors must show guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Defense teams will attack each link. Chain of custody for DNA, possible contamination, alternative explanations for presence at scene, and the authenticity or context of digital messages. Courts will parse whether the suspect's actions meet the legal definition of premeditated murder versus other charges. Cliffhanger. How will the public trials and political theater affect our civic life? The next section wrestles with the broader fallout. The bigger questions, political violence, rhetoric, and safety. A single act of political killing turns attention to the wider cultural climate. There are uncomfortable questions everyone is now asking. Does heated political rhetoric make violence more likely? Research doesn't support a simple causal chain, but rhetoric can normalize dehumanization that lowers barriers to violence for some unstable actors. Public figures have an ethical responsibility to avoid language that targets individuals in demonizing, dehumanizing ways. Are college campuses safe places for contentious debate? Outdoor events with large crowds require careful risk assessments. Organizers must balance free speech with reasonable security measures.